So on today's subject of the 3 pillars of sustainable development, namely ecological, economic and social sustainability, I always mention ecological sustainability first, because if we do not achieve it, there is no possibility for reaching the other 2 either. But all 3 are necessary components of sustainability. But before these 3 pillars, there is one even more fundamental basis for sustainability, which has rarely been mentioned, probably because it has been taken for granted. And I am, of course, referring to peace as a condition for any attempts to reach sustainability and sustainable development. When we have war instead of peace, we are engaged in destroying all forms of sustainability. The current situation with ongoing wars in Ukraine and Gaza has shown that even if the vast majority of the world's countries are not directly parties in these conflicts, they have effectively pushed climate change, loss of biodiversity, and other issues dealing with sustainability to second or third place on the international agenda. Not only have we neglected these existential threats to humankind, we have enhanced the third existentialist threat to our existence, namely nuclear weapons. To the extent that the Bulletin of Atomic Scientists has set its famous doomsday clock at 89 seconds to midnight, closer than ever before during the atomic age. And therefore, my first conclusion is that cultural diplomacy and any other kind of diplomatic activity should have as its goal the ending of ongoing wars, preventing future wars, and eliminating the potential for global annihilation through nuclear disarmament. And in this order, as there is no chance for achieving even modest arms reductions while wars are being fought. War is better than war is one of the quotes that have been attributed to Winston Churchill. It is another way of saying that diplomacy should always be put first. And diplomacy always entails communication between different actors. Without communication, there is no way to reach agreement on anything, let alone stopping wars, climate change, or species extermination. And it is also just as needed in working for economic and social sustainability as well. This self-evidently applies to cultural diplomacy, which is about the exchange of ideas, information, art, language, and other aspects of culture among nations and their peoples in order to foster mutual understanding. But this kind of communication is facing increasing difficulties and obstacles, and both political and technical. And the technical obstacles have also already been referred to, because face-to-face communication in the future and already today is something which can be very chimeric if you consider the fact that you never know who the person you are talking with on the net is he or she a creation of artificial intelligence, as increasingly is already the case today. So, but politically, calls for sanctions, including limiting people-to-people contacts, trade wars, and setting arbitrary restrictions, even on using certain words as a precondition for allowing exchange, are diminishing the possibilities for cultural diplomacy. And we are living today in a world where instead of encouraging and enlarging the exchange of ideas and interaction between nations and their citizens, we are witnessing the building of exclusive blocks and bubbles. People confined to these are restricted both by their governments and their own choices to communicating in the social media and elsewhere with other like-minded people. And this fosters alienation from and even hate towards others whose characteristics differ ethnically, socially, or just opinion-wise from those of one's own tribe. So what we need to do is to engage in removing borders and barriers, not erecting new ones. And this applies to physical as well as legislative and mental barriers. We need to foster inclusive global partnerships which are open to anyone and everyone who wants to join. A word on the condition of the world today, which is characterized by interdependence, whether we like it or not, in both things good or bad. And there are an increasing number of people who are dissatisfied with this interdependence and want to stop the world and get off. But this is no longer possible. When I was born, we had 2.3 billion people in the world, and today we have 8 billion. And the number is still growing. And this means that those things which were possible in a world inhabited by just a few 100 million people, or even 2 billion people, leaving aside all moral or ethical considerations, are no longer workable in today's world, as is shown by the crisis of sustainability. So we need to be open to each other, irrespective of our backgrounds. And also a word on multiculturalism, because multiculturalism, to my mind, is not only something which is necessary and unavoidable, but it is also something which should be welcomed as both enhancing our economic and cultural welfare and possibilities. Thank you.